The problem is that you have heaven, you have earth, and you have hell. Okay? The heaven is spiritual. It's consciousness. Hell, it's mechanical. It's machines. Okay? We're stuck in between. It's always our choice whether to choose heaven or hell because of free will. Okay? And for most of human history, we have chosen heaven. But eventually, you had people who chose hell. And when you have choose hell, you have access to technology, right? And this technology allows you to conquer and control other people. Okay? But once you control and you conquer and control other people, you have to get them to obey you. If you are enlightened, if you know the truth, you know that none of this matters. We're all gonna die, so why should I listen to you? So, in order for me to control you, I need you to fear death. Okay? I need you to forget God, and I need you to fear death. When you die, dying is the worst thing that can happen to you. Because remember, before people understood, death was just a part of the journey. It was a release. It was an opportunity to reset yourself and come back. Now, death is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Okay? So how do you forget God? And how do you get people to fear death? You use science. Right? And you create theories like the Big Bang, like evolution, like neuroscience, to make people forget the divinity inside you. Right? So that's what science is for. But unfortunately, for these people, that's not enough. Because eventually, we'll all die, right? So the only way around this is by creating a new technology called transhumanism. Okay? You may have heard of transhumanism. Again, don't worry about the concept now. We'll discuss this later on in the semester. But transhumanism is to surpass humanity, which basically means defeat death. To upload your brain to the internet so you're here forever. Okay? To trap you here forever. And so now the question then is, why are they doing this? Why are people in power doing this? Okay, so as we've discussed in this class, throughout human history, it's usually secret societies that have the power. Okay? Why? Okay. Well, last class we discussed the idea of bureaucracy, right? Mass bureaucracy. And we discussed how in a mass bureaucracy, bureaucrats don't really want to do anything. They're lazy. Well, guess what? If you're part of a secret society and you're able to coordinate secretly together, you can control the bureaucracy because you're the only people doing stuff. Okay? But then the the problem is bureaucracies do not like secret societies. So you have to maintain your secrecy. And how do you do that? You do that through transgression. If you guys are doing bad things together, okay? Now you have blackmail on each other. And therefore, you're committed to keeping each other's secrets. If one of you falls down, everyone falls down together, okay? So now you're committed to maintain the secrets. But the problem is this. The problem is, okay, it's conspiracy, but the moment you're found out, they'll come and arrest you. So how do you work together without actually meeting each other? And the answer is religion. Okay? Or the word we use is eschatology. Religion is just a script, an understanding of the world that allows you to coordinate secretly. Okay? Does all this make sense? Okay. So now these secret societies, they are embedded in a mass bureaucracy, and they're manipulating the bureaucracy, and they're working together to commit transgression. They have their own secret religion. Okay? When you combine these three together, what happens is that they're now forced to invert this understanding, inversion. Why? Because they know that they're doing evil in this world. So when they go meet God, God's going to punish them, right? So the way to get around this is, well, I will just worship someone who's superior to God, who is Satan, okay? Okay. So what they're going to do is they're going to invert this, okay? By celebrating Satan, they can now justify all their transgressions, right? As a way to empower Satan. Also, there's a fundamental weakness in the system, okay? So let's go over the three main characteristics of the system. The first is unity. Okay? So this entire system is complete and unified. Second is symmetry. Symmetry or polarity. And what this means is that if there's good, there must be evil. If there's ugliness, there must be beauty. Why? Because you cannot have one without the other, okay? One thing is meaningless without the other. That's why if you have God, you must have Satan, okay? And the third principle is as above, so below. And what this means is that everything is a reflection of each other. So you can never defeat God, but what you can do is corrupt human beings to worship Satan so that Satan becomes everything. Okay? All right. Are you guys following along? Okay? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to invert this world. And how do you invert this world? What you do is, you know that hell is material. And you know that heaven is spiritual, right? What you do is you brainwash people to worship the material world and abandon the spiritual world. You make money, power, technology, science, the greatest things in the world. Okay? You get rid of God. You get rid of religion. You get rid of compassion. You get rid of love. And that's how you control the world. So in other words, what is happening today is a war between heaven and hell. The people in charge, the secret societies, they are interested. They must make hell into heaven and heaven into hell. They must invert the world in order to maintain their power. So first thing to remember is that because of the principle of free will, God and Satan cannot interfere in this world. Okay? Second is we have to remember that there are different secret societies. There are thousands of different secret societies, okay? Well, the secret societies that are able to use all three principles to accumulate power are the most successful. Okay? So that's why they're promoting Satan. Then the third question then is, why doesn't God do anything about this? Okay? And the answer is because if you think about it, only in time of complete darkness, only when Satan rules can humans fully shine. Right? Does that make sense? So God has trust in us. God has faith in us. God loves us completely. God believes that someone will stand up and do the right thing. And when that person does the right thing, the universe will shine. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? So only in a time of darkness can the light truly shine. And remember, when someone shines that light is reflected in everyone else. So everyone's light shines as well. Okay? So that's the idea here. You can choose to shine if you want, but only if the world becomes really evil and dark and sinful can you have this option. Okay? So what all this is saying is this, okay? In reality, literally, everything is just vibrations. All right? How these vibrations work, right? No one knows, but it's all just vibrational. But what we know is we are participants in the universe. So if we all believe God exists, guess what? God exists. We all believe sin exists, sin exists. Okay? That's why this war, it's not over resources. It's over perception. Do you understand? This is a war of perception. If I can get everyone in the world to believe that God is dead and Satan is a true God, I win. Okay? And how do I do that? Well, I can do that by shooting rockets up into space, by putting man on the moon and on Mars. Okay? Why? Because now I've destroyed the concept of heaven. Before, we've understood that the moon, the Mars were beyond us because they are heavenly, they're spiritual. But once I put man on the moon and on Mars and go beyond, I've proven heaven doesn't exist. I've destroyed God. I can also fake an alien invasion and pretend these aliens are Satan, okay? Okay? All of science, you don't know this, but all of science, it's not about discovering reality, it's about reinventing reality in a way that serves power. That's what science really is. Historically, what's happened is that a charismatic leader has emerged to say that I am God's representative. Okay? Why? Because we believe we're all equal. Right? You're no different than I. What makes you God? Well, the answer is because I'm channeling God. Okay? And historically, so look at the early empires, the early kingdoms. What the kings say is that I'm descended from God. God came down, had sex with my mother, and now I'm born. Okay? But that person is not saying, I am God itself, but I am born of God. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So this is the basic framework for what we'll be working with the rest of the semester. Okay? But understand that what's happening today is a war between heaven and hell. If I can convince you that God is dead and Satan is the true God, if I can convince you that the material world is real, the spiritual world is a lie, if I can convince you that death is the worst thing to happen to you, and you should do all you can to live, then hell has won, okay? But what's important to understand is this system is set up so that hell can never win out. And the reason why is the entire cosmos is interconnected. So if we do evil, if we feel pain, if there's so much suffering in the world, the earth itself rebels, right? Because of vibrational energy. And this leads to things like the Great Flood, which resets the world and lets humanity renew itself. Okay? So there are all these different fail-safe systems in here to make sure that hell can never triumph. And that's why Elon Musk wants us to go to Mars, okay? All right? But understand, if you just use this concept of heaven and hell, even though it's metaphorical, even though God and Satan are just projections of our imagination, they do help us understand the world better. Okay?